Chapter 7 The Golden Path. The next day he had reached a path to the grounds. This was hills and grass that had died over a period of time. The hills were bountiful with green and lush like green foliage. The trees were in autumn, needing a blast of colours such as the browns were light browns, the veins almost turning brown on the leaves. He could see in the distance the roses blooming in the cold winds. The roses bloomed red and full of colour. They bloomed well. You could see the castle in the distance. The call of the wild was calling. The moment he could smell the fresh grass and the way it unfolded was amazing to him, but he could not understand the reasons behind its creation. Someone loved the garden here. He wondered whom it may be, but he could not be too sure, so hence he never really questioned it. He just walked on. He could see the hills in the distance of the land before him. The hills were green, with a lot of foliage. This time his next task was to gain access to the castle through him. This was no easy feat of walking, but he was prepared. He could see the task through the lands, and to the resting place of Jablana II when his mother Melody Feller buried him in the hills before him. It was an honour to walk to the resting place where he would meet his legend in his head. The excitement built up in his head as he progressed further than before to the hills where he would meet his ends and create a new legend for the eons to come. But this was a modern home. But he was more pleased for the moment when he would walk on that sacred soil. It was more than just a thought now, it had happened. He ventured further and further over time. He looked ahead and reached the fields of the land which were like orange and yellow leading to the mountain ahead of him. This was his goal. He was doing it. He ignored all the warnings from the people who asked of him. The task he was fulfilling. He could smell the success and was ready to embrace the challenge in front of him. But he could only be an hour away from the castle now. He looked at the path in front of him. It excited him with a smile. He was en route to the castle. He slowly ventured through the fields to find the resting place of the shard as it was. But this would be no mean feat, as he could smell the greenery. The smells were welcome and able to be in that place with them. He was happy with the idea of what he was doing now. It had taken him a long time to get there, but this time he was willing to do the task. All the warnings he had heard were just a thought. But that was what kept him going this time. He walked through the path in front of him. He could see the murderer crows standing about in the field in front of him. But only the idea of the crows was that he was wondering what was going on. He walked past the superstitious of them all. He walked past them, superstitious of them, and frankly not caring about them. He looked at the path, and with the lights of the Cloud9. It had taken him 3 hours. Chapter 9 The End. But after the moment he finally caught up with Redden, he was standing at the waters of Merlin's slumber before he fell to his death. He was holding the shard in his hand. Redden swooped at him. "Give me that power!" shouted Redden angrily this time. "No, I will complete my task," he said, irritated. This time Redden was not joking. This was his final task, to rid the land of the Jablana bloodline. But this was not his aim. He looked at him with annoyance again. Redden swooped again, this time knocking the poor elvish man to the ground. He slipped over the edge. He was hanging the shard in his hand. He looked up to see the man known as Redden looking at him with pure hatred and pain. He was now whimpering with regret. "Look, give me the shard and I will grant you immortality," he exclaimed, annoyed this time. "No, I will drop it in that fucking water," Rand exclaimed with pride. "Yes, and you will fall," Redden exclaimed as he danced on the edge of the rock. The rock started to shake as this happened. The only pleasure he had left was watching Rand just hang like a lamb to the slaughter. He looked down to see the darkness surrounding him with annoyance. "I will not let you destroy me," Redden shouted. Rand just hung there with a happy smile, his eyes never changing and never moving from his expression on his face. The look of Redden was comical, to say the least. as he watched him dangle more. He still had the shard in his right hand. He was gripping it tight. This was not the end of the task. Redden still dancing on the rock, making it rock backwards and forwards. He looked up to see the maleficent spirit just laugh with a hiss. Rand was more annoyed this time. He could hear the laughter getting louder and louder. The metal searing between the rock as the sword was being banged at his hand. "Try me now, son," Redden snarled at him. "Now give me the shard and you shall live," Redden exclaimed. Rand looked at him confused. "What do you mean? I'm in the Jeplena bloodline?" exclaimed Rand. "You are a reincarnation of him," he exclaimed. But this has not changed the situation, and only hurled Rand back to the task in hand. He slipped the shard over so slightly down his hand, but Redden looked down. He continued dancing on the brittle rock. Rand looked up at him, not fazed by the moment, this time more happier with what he was doing. And what was going on? He had not fazed by this moment. "You will not listen." Redden paused angrily. "Give me the shard now." Redden now getting even more impatient this time. Jeplena dropped the shard into the moss and rain-covered water. Redden raised his arm, but Rand caught it again. "You boy are teasing me," Redden snarled angrily. Rand looked up with a glint, then smiled. "You need a fright, you see," Rand exclaimed with a smile. "Ignorant little shit," exclaimed Redden, now dancing heavily on the rock. This caused tiny shards to fall into the water below his feet. "Come on, you elf of a man, just tell me how you plan to fix this," exclaimed Redden. Rand twiddled the shard in his hand and looked at the man in front of him, now increasing in annoyance. "This is not a game, sire. This is my life," Redden snarled at him. "I thought ghosts never had a life," he laughed as he said this. "You know?" But then he looked at Redden, now slamming the 7-foot sword on the rock heavily, the rubble from the cracks now falling into the water below him. But only the messages from the past were present. This time Redden was laughing. Like an insane man. "I'll get you. I'll get my life back," he hissed as he laughed at the situation. "Not have had my way, Rand exclaimed as he looked up from his eye line. Redden stopped dancing. Rand found footing where he could see the stone was beginning to chip away. But as he did this, the stone fell to the water below him, the 100-feet drop below him. But all he could hear was the echoes and the cries of a woman. "Stand down now, mother," the dark voice shouted. He was confused. Why was he getting a message? "Stand down now, mother." He was confused. Why was he getting a message from a strange woman? And then he looked up. It was a shrill woman with a cloak over her head. "Mela?" shouted Rand, but she did not answer. She looked at Redden and pulled her hood down as if it was his aunt. She looked down. "I have come from the tribes of Filard, and we shall bring Redden back from the dead," she exclaimed happily. "All we need is a shard," she hissed back. "You betrayed the Elvish clans again?" Rand shouted with a look of disbelief on his face. "What race?" "We come from the Redden bloodline," he hissed back. "You cannot trust him, he's pure evil." Rand looked at her with only confusion. "Rand, give Redden the shard," she shouted down. Rand dropped the shard down into the water below him. With a smile, he looked up and spoke. "It is done. The keepsake gone." He smiled as this happened. She ran out of the cave. Redden blew open like a cataclysm. She ran out to the caves. Of energy and lights, he fell to the floor. "The Filard reign is over," he sighed. He looked down at Rand. "The Filard reign is over? You know you're more to Blenhead You know, you're more to blame than you think. Redden spoke as he turned to Ash. Rand watched the shard sink to the bottomless water pit. He smiled as he placed his right hand on the rock, then pulled himself up. His aunt was nowhere to be seen, but this was the moment he realized that it was over. He looked for her, but she was nowhere to be seen. But he did bear some similarities to Melody Bell. The meeting with the strange man. The gates of the castle rustled like old bars on Helcomb's barracks. The night was setting in, thunder rolling in the sky, crashing making him turn his head as he saw the strange old man hunched over a book. It was a large with a skull embroidered on the cover. On the back, a picture of Merlin when he was younger. He grasped his wand tightly, then looked at the man with annoyance. You! What are you doing here? He paused. What is that book? Rand shouted at him, annoyed. This time making no secret of his annoyance at him. You, sire! I hear for what? The elder wizard exclaimed calmly. I may be blind, but magic does guide me. The wizard exclaimed again. Rand held his wand to him, but the elder wizard pulled out a key from his pocket and dangled it in front of him. You will need this, won't you? He snarled at him. Rand stood impatient. I have been tasked with destroying this piece of old wand, he exclaimed, proud of the robe. He looked at him. He pulled out the book while still holding the wand in his hand and opened it to the page. He looked at the music in the background of the Egyptian illustrations. Canaan! He shouted. Nothing happened. The old wizard laughed at him. You think me, Redden the First, will let you destroy the very thing that controlled Melinda years ago? He snarled again. No, she was helping in the end, Rand exclaimed again, this time more annoyed. You carry my great-great-nephew's wand? He paused. You think you can make it work? Exclaimed Redden, bursting laughing. I will use no curse. I want to help, he said confidently. The old man threw the key at him, this time annoyed. He was failing to get him annoyed. He knelt down and picked up the key, then approached the gate. You will fail, young sir, Redden hissed at him. Within a puff of smoke, he dispersed. Rand walks up to the gate and hurried with the opening, the creaking as the bars allowed him entry into the grand castle-like building. You will fail, Redden paused, but I will return, he hissed as the smoke dispersed. He looked at the old man with annoyance. You deceived me. Why? He shouted. The spirit was gone. He walked into the grounds and looked around and could make out the clock now with a big handle and crystal clock base, and it bent out of place and completely destroyed. He looked at the tallest tower of the building, once white, now greyish from moss overgrown. The castle was nothing now, a husk like Redden Tower. The castle was so badly decapitated that even the vagabond and the homeless would not sleep in it. He could see the path to the caves of Merlin, but all he could see was the remainders of what looked like an old spiral, now destroyed and gone by the terms of the way it was. He walked towards the maze, as this was the only access to the cave where the ring was to be destroyed. He knelt next to the flowing river, which he could clearly see. He held the wand to his face, then pondered on the next move. What is he doing? Where are you, Ren? He was annoyed this time. Where the fuck are you? He was irate this time. He had come so far, he was facing off with the Master of Arts. He heard that he died in a battle in the Theban War, but this was his unrested spirit. Then what could he do next? He could pursue the spirit, but it could lead him where he did not want to go. But only the elder's request was on his mind. He sometimes looked above the way he wanted the wand shard destroyed. A clunk came from the ceiling. There was a hanging skeleton with a helmet on it. Even the feudal guard were safe here. He wanted the task to be over. But all he could hear was the moment when he could not find the reason for Redden disagreeing. but as time progressed, he was somewhat running out of ideas. It was his great quest. He had to finish it fast. Otherwise, it would corrupt his elvish soul. It was not that he wanted. The reason he cared was his natural habitat was being torn from him. This was not what he wanted. But then again, he could see the task. Chapter X. Back to Hope. Ran looked over the river to the smiling woman waving at him. He bowed his head. A light footstep came up behind him. His mother looked at him.
Sorry about Mella. She was a fan of Redding.
She smiled. I know why she did it, he exclaimed. He looked at the water and smiled. But the thought now was, why was he suddenly to know he was Redding's great-great-nephew? Why did he want him to bring him back? Then again, is life not a mystery, he thought? The sun brought light, the moon brought food. There was another mystery he did not want to solve. Graham looked at the arched box in front of him. He could distinctly see the pentagram swinging in the box. The pentagram was made from silver with a set of miniature keys hanging down from the piece in itself. He looked at the clock in front of him. It was ticking, the copper-coloured brace with little silver gears ticking round. The main ticking mechanism from the keys that turned the clock and the dial with its intricate wires slowly unwinding as it tapped. The little teeth on the centre gear just barely seeable in the dim candlelit room. The Roman numeral was telling him it was 12 o'clock. It was in that moment when he gazed at the curious sight of his crystal ball. He chanted in his head roughly. Then the sounds of the dialer and the clock, made with roses and leaves in the bezel with a clear glass casing over the facelet. It was Rand. He was rambling in the hills to the westwards. He had been away for some time now. Rand was holding an old branch that had been hardened over a period of time. It was black walnut with a celatine globe on the top, placed on the top of a bespoke base. The golden beading with gold threads underneath the beading led down to a leather handle which was bound in copper wire to shape the indents that were on it. The beading reappearing with a small leather strap that had a chain above it with a leaf made from leather and copper feather. He was hiking again near the ruins of Mella's hut. He wondered what he was looking for. But was it the fact it was the hut that she lived in since the end of the Ice Age and not the original hut where she boarded until the end of the Second Pufart War? Who was he looking for and why? Western Rider, he uttered in an annoyed voice. That man was once called Coral, he exclaimed in an annoyed voice. He was annoyed because they once fought in the war against Lord Gallo, who was the man that changed the face of the land a long time ago. This time, this did not bode well with him. Also the fact that Rand was a direct great-great-nephew of Melody Fellard, and he was not happy with the effects of his recent discoveries on artifacts that he was finding to do with his family history. The reason was he was annoyed that was the mysterious findings were prophesied by the old soothsayer Tanel, who was part of the West Winds. But she was slain by the hands of George Fellard when he was taking control of the land. That was not unusual. Although he often looked at this as a positive and a welcomed idea of the wanderer Coral being a forgotten veteran of the Pufart War, he started to reminisce on the subject. It was a very dark night, the pale moon looming down on the land. His hands were covered in dirt. He had been digging for truffles that he could cook and eat. But he was annoyed. Coral had been bragging about his time in the battle with the Gallo men and women. It was that moment when he realised what had happened. His search was over. He was looking at Coral stuffing his face with truffles that he had found. You! That's my food! Shouted Graham, clutching onto his staff. Listen, Graham, I'm hungry. Got me yet? Exclaimed Coral with a long broadsword in one hand, his his other hand pushing truffles down his mouth. Well, maybe I could have some then? Grant exclaimed calmly. A Westwind rider could not really be understood. A man whom was part of the council until he fell out with the Triplet brothers in the Second Pufart War. He stopped contemplating on an idea when he went back to see what Rand was doing. Rand was banging his stick on a piece of the floor. Then he noticed the fact he was picking something up. No, not a death wish. He looked in fright. Rand held a colourful wand in his hand, the reds and greens with blue tones. He held it to his hand and smiled. As he started to flick it about, the clatter of copper pots, the smashing pot sounds of elements of dirty and moss-covered rice and pasta. He was somewhat taken by the sounds and power, but he quickly shoved it in his grey leather satchel and hurried back out of the building. He was faced with crossing a heavy bridge that was creaky and old. The slats rusted with old brown wood and light brown tones. He could see him just standing there with a sad look of disappointment. He always wanted the element to challenge him, but as he crossed the lines, and well, it was not the impossible aspect of his life. He was clicking at this point as the walking cane tapped along the ground. This was his aim in some of his journeys, just finding new things to do. When he was younger, he just ran up the hills to run back down. It was a thrill to him. But Grant knew too well how it happened. And well, he was always a bit annoyed at him. But this was not his downfall. And well, he could not always understand, but knowing he could destroy the spirit of Redden, he was kind of happy with his progress. But Rand was still clucking. He passed the rickety bridge. The idea of him being the enemy was just a pipe dream. But then again, it was Rand he was talking about, a man that was well acquainted with the idea of adventurer, something that his mother was also. She was the daughter of Melody Feller, but often just hid it from Rand. This was due to the fascination with the idea of the family still existing. It was true to him as well as the Westwind Rider, and was also the reason he did not always talk about them again.